I've made a terrible mistake, making everything in my game move on the grid. But not the movement was the problem here, but rather how it made adding a new content much more complicated. But what does it mean? Is it really a problem? Did I deal with it somehow? Stay with me to find an answer for these questions. Hi, I'm Björn and I am making my own game. The Anima is a 2D action roguelite game with heavy load of storytelling and exploration. Storytelling was something that I wanted to see in roguelikes, and other developers came to the same conclusion after some time. I was also wondering why all the roguelikes were bullet hell shooters these days, and I wasn't alone in this idea. Okay, let's try another one. Why there are no roguelites that uses a grid for the movement and they are not turn-based at the same time? Nope, the beats are your turns. After a few years of development I can tell you why. Because it's a little tricky. When we are playing games like The Binding of Isaac or Enter the Gungeon, our movement is continuous. The same with the attacks. We can move and attack wherever we want. Our smallest unit of measure is a pixel. In the traditional roguelites on the other side, our movement is discrete. Our smallest unit of measure is a tile of the grid. More values you have to choose from, more combinations of these values you can have when adding a new content. For example, in Enter the Gungeon, adding a new weapon is a matter of making few new graphics and combining mathematical functions for the trajectory of bullets. The same for the enemies. Making new attacks is relatively easy. But what about the grid-based games? Traditional roguelites have tons of enemies, attacks, items, weapons, and they're pretty good. So where is the problem? And there are no problems at all, if you remember about few important things when designing a game. Let's see. In the traditional roguelikes, it's easy to add a new weapon or items because there are a lot of attributes that they can change. When designing a new perk, developer is hooking it somehow into existing set of variables. Increased reload speed, more strength, dexterity, intelligence, faster attacks, you know what I mean. That's what I've made at the beginning of prototyping. Second important thing is that when game is based on turns, we have more time to carefully think about strategy or cast spells by controlling the cursor. I didn't need it because I wanted Anima to be full of action. Turns were not the solutions to meet this requirement, turns would kill the action for sure. You know what else was killing the action for me? Too many inputs to maintain in the fight. All these hotkeys with different skills or items bound to them. You have to remember what is where, how they work, etc. I don't say that's the bad thing. Many great games works like this and they are doing well, but not mine. To be honest, I didn't like fighting with enemies in my game back then. We like playing games when we get enough dopamine in a response for each of our inputs. It works for any kind of interaction, by the way. When playing my game, I had fun when moving around with a weapon and not caring too much about remembering what all these battles does. But I like the complexity of mechanics that the game used. This idea started to be more common some time ago when auto-battlers came from the mobile market to Steam. I even made an analysis of one of the games that makes use of similar concept. Check it out if you are interested. So, I've started to limit the number of players' input. But it didn't mean that the game was simpler. I've made complex actions more contextual. But what does it mean? Let's take a look at some Adobe software, Illustrator for example. That's how the UI looked in the previous versions. And that's how it looks now. Can you see the difference? There are much less panels. That's because you don't need all of them all the time. You can use one that changes UI depending on the context. That's how the contextual UI works. So I've ended up with 4 actions that player can do when fighting. Move and attack at the same time if a target is in range. Jump to avoid attacks. Throw a weapon, you can pick it up when stepping on it. And enter the rage mode, if you deal enough damage in the fight. Attack depends on the weapon that you are holding. Same with the rage mode. Throwing a weapon will have a different effect depending on the weapon and the rage mode too. I've also added minions that passively modifies effects of these interactions, like burning an enemy if you throw a weapon when in rage mode. And you know what? Limiting the input made my game much more dynamic, simpler and much better to play. That's when I liked playing it, and sometimes I was wasting too much time on doing so. From this point, controls in other games that I've played seemed to me a little clunky. Do you know what I've also changed? Attributes. I removed almost all of them, even the HP bar. Anima didn't need them. I think that you can see what is the problem, breaking the core foundation of initial design. I've made a great car without wheels. Game was great to play, for an hour maybe, and then it started to get boring. It was obvious for me that I had to add new minions with new perks. I started to do this and I was doing it pretty well for first 20 ideas. Then I realized that my options are limited, because I've removed a lot of variables that I could change with these perks. I couldn't even heal player, because there were not HP bar, but HP minions with no max value. In such situation, healing looks like this. I've experimented with adding new attributes, but it was starting to move anima towards the first version, which I didn't like. It was a bad time for my game. I couldn't add new content that easily like I would in other games of this genre. I came back to my design board. Let's think about it for a moment. The problem was that there were not enough variables to modify with new perks, which means that ideas for perks are strongly limited with the current set of variables. Adding new attributes to their character was bad because it was killing the gameplay. Adding new status effects like burn or freeze was okay, but it was hard to balance. Freezing enemies on hit is OP. Too OP. Adding a chance for freeze makes it hard to predict if it works or not. Adding a timer or counter to next freeze makes player watch it instead of playing, which is annoying. What we needed was more variables. I know that I have to invest more time and energy in minions. I've made them inspired by these little drone-like things from the Binding of Isaac. With them, I didn't feel alone anymore. Watching Tanima talk with me in the dungeon, I had them flying around all the time. You know what else makes me not feel alone? Subscribes, likes, comments and wishlists. Thank you guys for your support, we are making it together. I like the Binding of Isaac drones that could also fight, but I couldn't use this idea in my game because of the grid. And I was stupid and wrong. Again. I couldn't make them attack wherever they want, but I could use the same code that I was using for the enemy's AI, but without making minions move on the grid like other characters. That would be a little too chaotic. After successful prototyping and hacking AI code, I've started designing 3 example minions as a proof of concept. The first was the Knight minion, inspired by the most distinguishable unit in the medieval Europe, the Polish Husaria. The idea was to make a minion that will charge on enemies from time to time, burning them. Next one was the Wizard minion. He would randomly shoot flames, for example. The last one was a little different, the Shaman minion, a supporting one. From time to time he will cast an AoE spell that will buff player's attack if he steps on it. He will make player attacks burn enemies for a few seconds. I like this one the most, as he added some micro goals to the fight, like moving to some specific place in the limited amount of time. This idea is worth to exploit more in the future, for sure. As you may see, all of them are related with fire. I decided to make only one type of minions to check if it will be possible to make at least few builds with them in the future. There will be minions that will increase the fire damage, for example, or make their AI smarter. We will see. But at least it is much easier to balance for now. Let's see them in practice. As you may see, they are a little chaotic right now. Sounds and some graphic effects are missing or can be improved, same for the AI. I am also thinking about minions that will command other minions to make some kind of formations, for example. I'm not sure if this kind of camera is good for a fight. It could be static too. Which one is better? What do you think? I see that I've made a game hook by accident, so I have to change my elevator pitch a little. Hi, I'm Beard, and I'm making my own game. Tanima is a 2D action roguelike game with heavy load of storytelling and exploration, in which you build an army of adorable creatures to fight with psychopathic living crystal talking to you all the time. I hope that you like this video, let me know what you think. The comment section is yours.